That's right, it's time for more Sonic-like games, and let's not waste any time, let's just get right into it with a game that many people told me I should check out after my first video on Sonic-like games, Toree. And I can definitely see why people recommended these games to me, because there's definitely quite a bit of Sonic influence here. I mean, look at the level ranking when you complete a level. That's exactly what the letter grades look like in Sonic Adventure 2. And a lot of the aesthetical elements of the game definitely take some cues from Sonic, but when it actually comes to the gameplay, it really doesn't play anything like Sonic at all. The Toree games are just very, very simple, straightforward 3D platformers. You got a run button and a jump button, and that's it, and you just have to make your way through some short linear levels, and the Toree games are extremely short, only a handful of levels each, but they're also both like $1, so whatever. Plus, there's also some decent replayability here, trying to get all the collectibles and trying to complete the levels within a certain time, so these are pretty cool games. Definitely very fun, definitely recommended. In fact, there's even a third Toree game called Toree Genesis that the creator released for free that's just 3 little levels that definitely wear some Sonic influence on their sleeve. It was done for the, I think, 32nd anniversary of Sonic, and it's pretty neat. Normally, I'm not really into super-duper ultra-simplistic games like this, but the Toree games do manage to pull it off pretty well. These games are fun. I would definitely recommend them. And also, if you get a bit deeper into the Toree games, you might find that there's a little bit more to them than meets the eye, but you're gonna have to play for yourself to find out what I mean by that. Next game I want to talk about is Teabat, another small little indie game that's got some Sonic influence to it, but is also very much doing its own thing. Instead of being a series of linear levels that you have to try to get to the end of, Teabat is more of an open collectathon style game. Here you have a bunch of interconnected areas, and you have to explore around and try to collect as many teapots as you can. And it's kind of unique. There's not too many 2D collectathons out there, and you know, a lot of 3D collectathons are focused on like doing missions or objectives or like quests or mini-games, things like that. But Teabat instead is pretty much entirely focused on traversal, just moving around the game world trying to find the teapots that are hidden all over the place, doing a bunch of platforming and exploring, and it's pretty cool. It definitely has a feel to me of like the classic 2D Sonic games when you're looking around for like item monitors and extra lives and stuff like that. Like if you're a really big fan of the exploration elements of 2D Sonic games, looking around trying to find goodies, then I definitely think Teabat will appeal to you. It feels just like that. Next, I want to cover a couple of Sonic-like games that are not currently out, but have a lot of potential and I think look very, very cool. First of which being the game Dynacat. And immediately you should be able to tell that this game is actually taking a lot of inspiration from Sonic 3D Blast of all things, and that's pretty interesting. You know, Sonic 3D Blast is a game with such a mixed reception that I never would have imagined someone would make something like this for it, but they have, and it's very cool. But the game is not just a carbon copy of Sonic 3D Blast, it's actually very different in a number of ways. Like, for example, the goal here is not to, like, go around these open levels and try to collect a bunch of things in order to access new areas. Instead, it kind of mixes the 3D Blast type of gameplay and formula with more traditional Sonic gameplay. So you have more straightforward, get to the end of the level style design here, and you also have things like the homing attack, and you got like kind of slope physics going on a little bit. You also have an interesting like boost mode that you can enter and exit pretty much on the fly, which is very cool, and you have a grappling hook you can use to like swing around on things or fling off of stuff, and you can like go on walls and curve around and things. It's like, damn, this game is doing a lot of really cool, interesting stuff. Like, this is very, very neat. I am really surprised how well they're managing to make this work. There are still some problems a little bit with like the isometric view definitely can make 3D platforming a little bit difficult. But overall, I think the game is looking really nice, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. Another upcoming game I want to cover is actually a sequel to a game I covered in my first video on Sonic-like games, Polyroll Pocket, obviously the sequel to Polyroll. And this game is taking Polyroll and giving it a bit of a Game Boy aesthetic, which is pretty cool, and the first Polyroll was a good game, so I'm sure this will be a good game too. Definitely looking forward to it. And lastly, I want to highlight a game called Poglings, which recently had a Kickstarter, and this is the game for all the people that have been begging for the Chow Garden to return in the Sonic games, because that's what this is. Just look at it. And to my knowledge, outside of the Chow Garden type stuff, the other part of the game is kind of like an Animal Crossing type deal, so if you like Chow Garden, you like Animal Crossing, definitely a game to keep an eye on. Personally, I don't care about either of these things. I'm not really looking forward to this game, but I imagine that many Sonic fans probably would be, so there you go. Poglings, check it out. Now, we're far from done with this video, of course. I got plenty more games I want to highlight, but at this point, I've pretty much run out of games that are, like, really explicitly inspired or influenced by Sonic in some way. So at this point now, we're kind of getting a little bit further away from Sonic-like games, and now we're kind of going more to games that have some degrees of similarity to Sonic games, or games that I think that fans of Sonic games would really enjoy. Mostly we're going to be focusing on fast, physics-based platformers, usually that have some kind of emphasis on, you know, speedrunning, time attack, that kind of thing. And the first of those games that I want to talk about is Dustforce. This game is really, really cool. Has some of the coolest movement I've ever played in a 2D platformer. It has some cool physics stuff going on where you can, like, build speed while sliding down slopes and then carry that speed into long-distance jumps and stuff, but that's not really the focus of the game. The core idea behind Dustforce is that, like, you're a bunch of janitors or whatever, so you have to go around these levels and not just get to the end, but also clean up all of the filth along the way. Which really that translates into you having to platform through these levels in very specific ways to hit all the points that they want you to go to. And doing that is going to require a lot of skill, a lot of precision, and a lot of really cool use of the game's very interesting and unique movement mechanics. The coolest thing about Dustforce is that, like many 2D platformers these days, you can wall run, but it doesn't just stop at wall running. You can actually run along any surface in the game, including ceilings. Of course, if you're not running on the ground, then you can only run on a wall or ceiling for so long before you fall off, but that's where using jumps to extend your wall runs really becomes a big focus of the game. And additionally, you can transition your wall runs into ceiling runs, into more wall runs, and every time you transition into a different type of run, that will extend how long you can keep going for. And so you end up with really cool, interesting, unique platforming that I've not seen in any other game, where you're doing all kinds of maneuvers that are just so awesome, and the game feels so good to play. It is so much fun, and it is also one of the hardest games I've ever played in my life. So hard, in fact, that I haven't beaten this game yet, because the last couple of levels are just way too fucking hard, and I cannot get S ranks on them, and you have to S rank every level to unlock the final level, and I just can't fucking do it because this game is so fucking difficult. The amount of precision needed in the later levels is ridiculously high, but it's extremely rewarding if you get into it because it's so much fun to move around in this game, so definitely want to check this one out. It is super duper cool. And actually, while Dustforce is a very unique game, there is at least one other 2D platformer I've played that's quite like it because it was actually directly inspired by Dustforce, called The King's Bird. And this game kind of has similar stuff going on where you can do wall runs and ceiling runs and all that kind of stuff. Very similar movement to Dustforce, but the big thing about The King's Bird is that in addition to all that stuff, you can also fly in this game, but the flight is very interesting and unique. You can't just fly freely. It's more like gliding, and you kind of have to build up momentum by falling, and then when you start gliding, you can turn upward and convert that downward speed into distance or even height. It is very, very fun, very cool, and honestly probably some of the best flying that I've ever played in any video game, so definitely highly recommended. And another similar game to these two is one called Fists of the Forgotten. It even has a similar kind of silhouetted art style to The King's Bird. And this game isn't out yet, it's only a demo right now, but already I think that this game has a lot of potential and looks very, very cool and is very fun. This game definitely has a bit more Sonic-esque stuff going on, because a big focus on this game is using slopes to manipulate the physics of the game to give yourself more speed and more height. You can slide down slopes to gain a bunch of speed and then use that speed for really big jumps, and you can use upward slopes to increase the height and distance of your jumps as well. You also have your big robot fist, which you can use to do like a rocket punch that functions as like a dash to get yourself up to speed, or you can use it as a little bit of an air dash to extend your jumps or give give yourself more height. But a pretty cool thing I discovered is that instead of just doing the rocket punch to give yourself a boost, you can actually punch into something and that will push you away from the thing and it will give you even more speed. So that's pretty neat. I like that. And also, in one of the trailers for the game, they show that you also get other abilities with your arm as well, including a grappling hook, which is very exciting to me. I love grappling hooks. And yeah, very cool game. The level design in the demo was pretty interesting to me when I was playing it because it seems like it's really asking you to have a good grasp of how to use the slopes and the physics to manipulate your jumps. Like, it was asking for some stuff that I was looking at going, oh, some people are gonna struggle with this stuff if they're not really familiar with how to do, like, slope physics-based platforming. Which could potentially hurt the game's accessibility, but I think it could also mean that the game is really going to take advantage of slope physics in cool ways and really ask you to utilize them really well, which would definitely be very exciting to me, so Fist of the Forgotten is most certainly a game I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Now, here's a game I love, Speedrunners. If you've not played Speedrunners, you gotta fix that right now. What Speedrunners is a competitive, kind of like racing 2D platformer, but instead of racing to the end of a linear level, instead the way the game works is that if you fall off the screen, then you die, kind of Smash Bros. Style, and the player in first is kind of dragging the camera forward with them, so you can't fall behind too far, and if you do, you're out, and it's last man standing. And for some added tension, once someone dies, the screen starts to slowly shrink, and so the area you have to work with gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and this game can be really freaking fun when you're playing it with friends. It does have a single-player mode, but this is a multiplayer game through and through. If you're playing it with some buddies, you're gonna have a great time, I guarantee it. And what I like about Speedrunners is that it is not like a very basic, simple, like precision platformer. This is a physics-based platformer, and the skill ceiling is very, very high. So it's very possible for really good players to be neck and neck to each other, and it gets really tense because anyone makes a mistake and it's all over, and it's super fun. And also, an interesting aspect of the game is that all of the levels are tracks, and you lap around them multiple times. You just keep on going until everybody is dead, which means that as you play more and more of the same game, you're going to learn the level more and more, which is going to help you, because as you're out in front, you're like at the very edge of the camera, and you can't really see what's coming on, which is a really good natural built-in catch-up mechanic, because you can't see what's coming, so you're going to end up hitting a lot of stuff on your way and slowing yourself down. But as you get further into the game and you learn the level a little bit more, you can kind of memorize where things are and then use that to your advantage, and that definitely has a little bit of a Sonic feel to it, and it's very cool. Plus, also, there's some random items thrown in there for some chaos, but all the items are avoidable if you're good enough, so it's all very skill-based, very fast-paced, very fun, very cool. Definitely recommended that you play this game with friends. It is a blast. Now, here's one that I have to talk about, Doritos Crash Course, and I know the immediate reaction is to go, Pariah, what the fuck are you talking about? Some fucking corporate Doritos advertisement Xbox Live game. What is this stupid shit? But hear me out here, bro. Doritos Crash Course is actually really fucking fun. It is a really solid 2D platformer with really fun gameplay, great mechanics, and really good level design, actually. What makes it so fun is the flow of the game. What's really cool about this game is that it is designed in such a way that if you are blasting through the level, not really making any mistakes, then everything is going to line up perfectly for you to just cleanly get through everything. There are a bunch of like moving platforms and swinging ropes and stuff, things you might normally have to wait for in a platformer, but everything is lined up in just such a way that if you are on a really clean, good run, you're gonna get through everything without having to wait almost at all. And everything actually works off of checkpoints, so even if you mess up something earlier, if you get back on a good flow, then everything will line up going forward. And the mechanics and movement are really fun. You know, it's very simple, just run and jump, but the big thing is that on downward slopes you can slide and build up a bunch of speed and then use that to jump long distances. And that can enable you to do a bunch of cool skips, and it's even got some, like, Sonic-esque, like, multi-tiered level design, where the higher parts of the level are faster but more challenging, and if you mess up, you drop down to the lower, easier part. It is really, really fun. Like, straight up, if you have an Xbox, you can still play it, even on modern Xboxes, like Xbox One, Xbox Series. Definitely play Doritos Crash Course. It's fucking free, and it's got like a level pack for like $3 or something like that. Super cool game. Ridiculously good for how it's a fucking free Doritos advertisement game. Definitely go play it if you can. Next up, we have Mekazoo, and this game is pretty cool. It's a 2D platformer where you have a bunch of different animal robots that you can control, and each of them has different abilities. And one of those animals is an armadillo that can roll around at the speed of sound, and you can go through loops and up walls and, you know, do a bunch of Sonic stuff, and it's very cool. But all the other animals are really cool as well. You got like a frog with a grappling hook tongue and a whole bunch of other stuff. And every level you can swap between any two of these creatures based on, you know, the level design, what it's designed for. And a really neat thing about Mekazoo is that it seems like pretty much all of the level design is built in such a way that you don't have to swap back and forth between the two different forms. You can if you want to, but the levels also seem to be completely doable just sticking to your preferred form, and various different aspects of the level will interact differently to enable you to play the game pretty much however you want. Very cool, very interesting. You got a bunch of different types of movement you can do with all the different forms, and you can swap back and forth between or not, play it however you want. The general game and level design of Mekazoo feels very akin to the Donkey Kong Country games to me, so if you're a fan of those, I definitely think this is worth checking out. Okay, here's another one where your immediate reaction might be, Pariah, what the fuck is this on my screen? But again, hear me out. Super Bunny Man is actually really cool. It's a very, very unique physics-based platformer that's honestly kind of hard to describe how it works. When you jump in this game, it's entirely based on the orientation of your character. So the angle that you jump is manipulated manually by turning your character and rolling them around to get them in the right position, so that way they'll jump the way you want them to. And absolutely everything is physics-based, and you can also grab onto stuff, and it's a really fucking goofy, weird-ass game, but it is actually quite fun to play. And it can also be fucking hilarious. You can play the entire campaign in 2-player co-op, and I highly recommend you do that if you have the opportunity. You will be laughing your ass off playing this game with a friend. And, you know, I would say it kind of counts as a Sonic game. You got springs, you got spikes, you got physics-based platforming with some kind of an animal person, I guess. It's even got medals for completing the levels in under certain times, so it's even got a speedrun element to it. So this counts, right? This is Sonic-like, kind of, a little bit. Whatever, regardless, it's a fun game. You should definitely give it a look. Next is Super Sami Roll, which isn't really a very Sonic-inspired game at all. More than anything, it's actually inspired by the 3D Mario games, particularly things like 3D World. But because Sonic itself has a lot of Mario influence, it still ends up kind of feeling a bit Sonic-like, because it's a very cool physics-based platformer. You're a little animal dude rolling around in a ball. And a big thing in Super Sami Roll is that you can use your tongue as a grappling hook in a very unique way that enables a lot of cool platforming, bullshit, shortcutting your way through levels. Lots of fun stuff. It's got an emphasis on speedrunning. There's ranks you can get for completing the levels in under certain times, and it's really, really fun. It's also really fucking hard. If you're one of those people that struggles with, like, depth perception in 3D platformers, Super Sami Roll is not the game for you. This game can ask for some extremely high levels of precision, especially if you want to play it fast. But overall, it's a very, very fun game. Definitely check it out. Next up, we have Crumble, which is actually a game I was going to include in my first video on Sonic Likes, but I thought it was a little bit too far away to really count. But I'm already including games like that in this video anyway, so now I'm mentioning it. And yeah, it's a physics-based 3D platformer, and it's definitely got some Sonic-esque elements going on for sure, but the reason I didn't include it in the first one is that more than anything, Crumble is a grappling hook-focused game. You have a tongue that you can stick out and grapple at any time, and you do a lot of swinging around in this game, and it's super cool. I don't know about you, but I have a major hard-on for grappling hook games. I think they are fun as fuck, and I'll always take another one, and Crumble is definitely a cool one. The other thing with this game is in the title, Crumble. A big part of it is that a lot of the elements of levels are entirely physics-based objects that can crumble and fall apart, and so you have to quickly platform your way through these levels as they are falling apart around you, which is pretty cool. Here's a cool one that's very obscure. I just randomly stumbled across this on Steam one day, Kabounce, and this game is primarily supposed to be a multiplayer game where it's kind of like an FPS-style thing with like team deathmatch modes and stuff. But instead of being a shooter, you're a bunch of pinballs in 3D space, and you have to slam into other players, which is pretty cool, but, you know, it's an indie multiplayer game, so unfortunately there's nobody playing it. But it also has a cool little single-player mode that's a bunch of platforming stages with time challenges, and it's pretty fun. It's got some cool movement mechanics. It basically has a drop dash in it where you can spin, and when you hit a surface, then you'll just launch off in the direction you're pointing. But you can also do it off walls, which is very cool and neat, and you got an air dash, and yeah, it's a fun little game. The levels are short, they're fun, they're good. Probably worth checking out. I'd also like to mention the OlliOlli games. This is the most recent one, OlliOlli World, and these are 2D skateboarding games, and, you know, they're very different than Sonic, but they have some aspects to it. You know, Sonic has a lot of skating influence, obviously. And, you know, it's got some physics-based stuff going on. It's even got some kind of multiple tiers going on in a similar way as Sonic, where if you mess up, you fall down to the lower part of the level. So, you know, close enough, I would say. The important part is that they're cool, fun games that I think Sonic fans would enjoy, so give them a look. Now, this last one is one that I can't 100% say is particularly Sonic-like, but a lot of people were telling me to check it out in my first video, and having played a little bit of it, I definitely see what they're saying. This is Solar Ash, which kind of has some similarities to Sonic Frontiers, actually. It's an open-world 3D platformer with a big emphasis on its movement, and you're dashing around, using slopes to get big jumps off of stuff. You, like, climb on the specific climb areas, just like the walls in Sonic Frontiers. You grind around a lot. It's definitely got a number of similarities to Sonic Frontiers. It's even got the thing where when you complete an area, you have a boss fight with a big cool monster thing, just like Sonic Frontiers. So I would say if you like Sonic Frontiers and that whole kind of open world 3D platforming gameplay, Solar Ash is definitely one worth checking out. And real quick, one final game I want to highlight is one that was just recently announced, Penny's Big Breakaway by Evening Star, Christian Whitehead's studio. And, I mean, I don't really have much to say about it. Just look at the gameplay in the trailer. This game looks amazing. Oh my fucking god, I can't wait for this. Clearly the game is mostly doing its own thing, but there's definitely still some Sonic DNA in there, and just overall the game looks fucking amazing. So if Penny's Big Breakaway is not on your radar, it definitely should be. And there you go, a bunch more cool Sonic-like games, you know, mostly Sonic-like, kinda. Some of them were Sonic-like, but whatever. In general, just a bunch of cool physics-based, fast-paced platformers that any Sonic fan, I think, would enjoy. So, go play them, they're cool games. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed. If you did and you'd like to support the channel, there's links to my Patreon and Ko-fi page in the description. I'll see you next time.